I'm Amanda Knox, and you're listening to Hard Knocks. I'm having a wee existential crisis. For 18 years, I have been on what has felt like an epic quest for truth. Ever since the fall of 2007, when my roommate Meredith was murdered and I was wrongly accused of killing her, I've been trying to set the record straight. I tried with the police when they questioned me for 53 hours over 5 days in the wake of her murder. They didn't listen. I tried in court. I was convicted. My family tried to set the record straight for me while I was silenced in prison, but their voices were buried beneath a mountain of misinformation and scandal designed to protect institutional reputations at the expense of the truth. 8 years after my arrest, the Italian High Court finally acknowledged error, but only partially. The final verdict concluded that Meredith's true killer, Rudy Gaudet, had committed her rape and murder with unknown others, and that my boyfriend Raffaele and I were possibly present but uninvolved. We were finally acknowledged as innocent, but the court left open the possibility that we knew more than we were telling, and that we were covering for a killer and his phantom accomplices. It was a logically inconsistent conclusion that satisfied no one, not Meredith's family, and not me. I emerged into freedom legally exonerated of murder, yet socially branded. Traumatized by multiple perpetrators over multiple years, I re-entered a world that did not seem like it wanted me. I was not only endlessly scrutinized and doubted, but I was held accountable for Meredith's erasure. I was treated as if I had authored all the headlines that had ignored her while putting an obsessive focus on me. Perhaps worse, I was blamed for my own wrongful conviction. From many different sources, the same message. I had been wrongly convicted not because of a broken system or unscrupulous media, but because something was uniquely wrong with me. No matter how much I tried to correct the record, I found myself trapped inside a narrative written by others. My attempts were branded as cash grabs and profiteering off tragedy. I was labeled an attention whore. If I argued I wasn't a villain but a victim, that just earned a follow-up critique. You're not the real victim. That's something I call the single victim fallacy. Even to those who accepted my innocence, I was still the girl accused of murder. Nothing I could ever do would displace that from the top of my Wikipedia entry. That was a soul-crushing thing to carry, but it also gave my life a shape. I had a clear enemy, a clear mission, and a reason to get up and fight each day, even if my fighting never seemed to have much effect. After years of waiting for satisfaction that never came, I tried something different. I reached out to my prosecutor, the man who had stood in court and painted me as a sexually deviant she-devil. I corresponded with him for over 2 years, patiently, gritting my teeth at times, always offering him the benefit of the doubt he never offered me. I got to know him as a human being, his love of rainy days, his old man irascibility, his love of Wagner and Lord of the Rings, his grief over the death of his family dog, Arlo. I wanted to understand him so I could understand how he could have looked at me, a naive 20-year-old language nerd from Seattle, and thought, now there's my rapist and murderer. I chose curiosity over confrontation. Eventually, I traveled back to Italy to sit down across from him. I asked him questions instead of making demands. I acknowledged that while our interpretations of reality were not equally correct, I know the truth of where I was that night, and he still believes I was present in the house. They were psychologically real to each of us. I gave what I could, regardless of what I might receive in return. He did not give me the apology I deserve. He gave me partial acknowledgement and his own human vulnerability. It wasn't justice, but it was movement. More importantly, I realized that I couldn't let my well-being depend on him or anyone seeing the light. All I could do is show up, and be a person I could be proud of. From that experience, I learned some important things I've tried to carry forward. You must live the life you have, not the life you think you deserved. Wanting him to admit fault and be sorry was about wanting what I deserved. Wanting that and not getting it was an equation for misery. Letting go of that, I was able to accept him for who he was and what he was capable of thinking and saying. Doing that allowed him to grow, even if just a bit. If you treat people as fierce opponents, they tend to oppose you. If you treat them as allies, you might be surprised by how they show up. I shared those lessons everywhere I could. In public talks, in my memoir Free, My Search for Meaning, in the Hulu series I executive produced, The Twisted Tale of Amanda Knox. Shoot, even my husband shared it through his documentary, Mouth of the Wolf. I shouted the story from every rooftop I could climb because I know it matters. And by the end of 2025, I felt something I hadn't expected to feel. A sense of completion. It was complicated and imperfect. My legal saga still isn't over. I remain a convicted felon in Italy on a slander charge stemming from the statements I was coerced into signing, and my appeal to the European Court of Human Rights is pending. But despite that, after 18 years of grief and anger and public engagement, I had done what I set out to do. I had taken back agency over who I was. So, why am I now asking myself, who am I? For my entire adult life, injustice was my engine. Not just my motivation, my engine. It structured everything. It told me what mattered, what to work on, where to direct my energy, how to spend my days. When you're fighting something, the fight itself answers the question of purpose. You don't have to construct meaning from scratch because meaning arrives pre-built, urgent, and obvious. An opponent is clarifying. An injustice is orienting. Even suffering in a perverse way can be stabilizing because at least you know what you're doing and why. I often thought, in those wayward days of early freedom, that pain was easier in prison because at least there it made sense. I didn't choose this engine. It was chosen for me, violently, at 20 years old. But I ran on it for nearly 2 decades, and now I find myself asking a question I genuinely don't know how to answer. What generates purpose when there's nothing to push against? I think about this differently now that I'm a mother. My kids are watching me figure this out in real time. I want them to see me build something, not just defend something. I want my daughter to grow up believing she's allowed to pursue what she loves without needing to justify it against some higher moral ledger. But I find I haven't quite given myself that same permission. I still reach for the ledger. I still ask, is this important enough? Does this matter enough? My husband encourages me to imagine a different engine. Joy. Creation not fueled by resistance, but by genuine desire. I understand it intellectually. I even believe it. But I don't yet know how to feel it as true. Fighting gave me a structural identity. Without a fight, I sometimes catch myself wondering whether there's anything underneath, whether the person who emerged from all of this has a self that's truly her own, or whether she's just the sum of her resistances. There's a fear layered on top of this too, and I might as well name it. I worry that if I keep mining my trauma for wisdom, no matter how much it personally heals me or changes others' lives, I'll continue to be labeled a narcissist, a manipulator, someone who turns tragedy into a personal brand. That accusation has been so persistent that it feels like an internalized jury that's been living in my head since 2007. And I wonder, is that why this driving question has quieted, or at least changed register? Or have I genuinely tapped the bottom of this well? I don't want to model that jury for my children. I do my best to remind myself that I have every right to extract as much wisdom, healing, and yes, even profit out of the terrible injustice I suffered. But that doesn't change the fact that it feels different now. My driving question is no longer, why did this happen? Who is accountable? And how do I make them see? It's something smaller and harder. What do I actually want to make now that making something isn't an act of survival? I think of Bo Burnham's song Comedy, where he anxiously interrogates whether his life's work must heal the world lest it be frivolous. Should I stop trying to be funny? Should I give away all my money? He sings, only to pause and deliver a perfectly shuddering, no. He's poking at a real anxiety, while also acknowledging the absurdity of forcing art to be merely a vehicle for moral concerns. Art or comedy doesn't have to save the world, nor does Bo Burnham. But I feel that anxiety. I've used justice as permission for everything I've created. Without it, the ground seems to shift, like I'm standing on something that hasn't fully settled yet. Who am I when I'm no longer fighting? I'm a woman with an origin story that's been told many times by me and others. A woman with 2 kids who are watching, and a persistent low-grade fear that nothing I make from here on out will matter as much as the thing that was made of me, and a growing, stubborn suspicion that this might be exactly the wrong way to keep score. What I do know is that if my daughter came to me at 38, electric with excitement about something she'd made, about a new project or new direction, and she was hesitating because strangers on the internet might question her motives, I would tell her in a heartbeat, fuck 'em, go for it. Go for it. I'm having a wee existential crisis, but I think it might be the good kind.